I wanted to start with just saying that I'm very privileged to be here. I feel so blessed to be a part of this task force. My organization that I started in Indiana years ago, 25 years ago, a legal services group, not funded by Legal Services Corporation, has been serving veterans for over 15 years through their homeless shelter in the area. So I feel really honored to be a part of this issue and this task force and to be speaking with these people who are on the ground doing the work that really matters. To start off with, let me introduce our panel. We have Dr. Marion Eakin. I'm not really going in order, but we'll go back and forth here. Dr. Marion Eakin is a psychiatrist and director of the New York Harbor Healthcare Veterans Affairs Mental Health Clinic here in Manhattan. She did her medical and residency training at Harvard and has been with the VA since 2002. She's been the medical liaison for New York Legal Assistance Group Medical Legal Partnership for her facility since 2012. She works with vets from all walks of life and has a particular interest in the treatment of those with post-traumatic stress disorder. She served for years as site director for the VA Rotations Psychiatry residents in the NYU training program. Samantha Kubek, am I pronouncing that right? Okay, very good. I'm Kuzma, right? So, okay. Is a staff attorney with the New York Legal Assistance Group's Legal Health Division. Samantha joined NYLAG in 2016. In January 2017, she established the nation's first legal clinics for women veterans at the Bronx and Manhattan VA hospitals. These clinics provide a safe place in which clients can receive trauma-informed legal assistance. Samantha serves women veterans on a variety of legal issues, including VA and other government benefits, family law matters, discharge upgrades, credit issues, and advanced planning. Samantha is a graduate of New York University School of Law. Cindy Johnson. Cindy is the deputy, she's on the end. Cindy is the Deputy Director at Connecticut Veterans Legal Center, which is one of the biggest veterans programs in the whole country and most well-known as far as I know. She specializes in VA benefit applications and appeals. CVLC was the first medical legal partnership co-located at the VA and has been serving veterans in recovery for 10 years. Cindy also co-teaches a veterans benefits advocacy clinic at Connecticut School of Law and is the chair for the Veterans and Military Affairs section of the Connecticut Bar. Dr. Jacques Tsai has dual appointments with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Central Office and Yale University School of Medicine. He serves as the research director for the National Center on Homelessness Among Veterans and is an associate professor of psychiatry as well as director of the Division of Mental Health Services Research at Yale. Dr. Tsai has published over 150 peer-reviewed articles on topics related to homelessness, severe mental illness, trauma, and health disparities. Thank you so much for this panel. We're really glad that you're here. Before jumping into our sessions, I'd like to provide some brief background on our topic. Medical legal partnerships are collaborations in which attorneys are embedded in the healthcare settings to address unmet civil legal needs of patients. Through these partnerships, attorneys train medical providers on how to identify common legal problems that impact patient health, and patients with legal problems are referred to on-site attorneys for same-day legal help. Medical legal partnerships create opportunities to reach people who would not identify their legal problems as such, and they allow individuals to access lawyers quickly and easily when legal help is needed. One way that civil legal services providers can effectively reach homeless and low-income veterans is through partnerships with Veterans Affairs, VA medical providers. Currently, there are more than 173 legal help sites hosted by VA medical centers. 30 medical legal partnerships and 143 free legal clinics. Today, we'll focus on how two of these medical legal partnerships operate to address the unmet civil legal needs of low-income veterans. We will also hear from a VA doctor and research director about how medical legal partnerships can improve health outcomes for our veterans. Okay, to start with, Samantha, can I start with you?
Sure.
How did the New York Legal Assistance Group's partnership with New York Harbor Healthcare System come about?
So Legal Health has been working in the medical legal partnership model since 2001, and we're the nation's largest medical legal partnership. And so we had been serving the New York City low-income population for years, and we realized that serving veterans inside of VA hospitals would be a natural extension of that work. And so in 2011, the VA released a directive, a policy directive, saying that they wanted to increase legal referrals for homeless veterans. And so at that time, we worked together with the General Counsel's Office of the VA and with the local counsel's office and with the Manhattan VA to establish our partnership with the VA, which started in 2012. So that was sort of the beginnings of that partnership, and it's only grown over the years.
So how does the structure work?
Yeah, so as I said, so starting in 2012 is when we began our relationship with the Manhattan VA, and we created an intake line for veterans to call. And so any veteran can call this intake line. If you go into the Manhattan VA, you see flyers everywhere with the number for them to call. And they can call, they'll be intaked by one of our attorneys or paralegals, and they'll then be set up with an appointment time to come to meet with the attorney. We're on site every week. We are our original clinic was based in outpatient mental health. And so that's where we started. But we started to realize that there were populations that weren't necessarily being outreached to and being served as fully as we wish they were. And so in 2017, I opened my clinics for women veterans. And we wanted to do this because we realized that women veterans were being underserved in the population. There wasn't a space for them. We were hearing about how many of our clients didn't always feel comfortable in the hospital or in certain parts of the hospital. They wanted a safe space that was theirs where they could receive their legal services, particularly because, as Nicole said in the earlier panel, so many of our women clients are survivors of military sexual trauma. And so being in the VA in an environment surrounded by veterans and in an environment can sort of feel like military-like, they felt uncomfortable. And so we opened the women's clinics. And so those clinics are served in the same way as our general clinics, but they are located in women's health. And so the clients who are coming to meet with me in the women's clinics wait inside of the women's health waiting room. It's a space just for women, and so they can feel a little bit safer and supported. We've also opened clinics for older veterans and for post 9/11 veterans, because we found that by having specialized clinics, we not only could do increased outreach to those populations, but we could also ensure that the attorney representing the clients had the right expertise for the issues the veterans were coming to them for. So with my clinic, as I said, there's a lot of military sexual trauma. Older veterans, there were a lot of issues with home care and long-term planning. Many veterans have never used Medicaid up until this point because they are receiving care through the VA, but oftentimes Medicaid is a way for them to get better long-term planning. So assisting with those issues, post 9/11 veterans was a lot of combat PTSD, more discharge upgrades were happening in those clinics, and so we've really grown in that way. And one of the things that we found very helpful is part of what Legal Health does is we train healthcare providers to help spot issues that their patients may be experiencing. Because a lot of times we're always siloed into the thing that we're trained to look at. So doctors are looking for medical issues, and social workers are often looking for the ways in which those issues may be the ways in which the systems may need to better support their patients, but they may not realize that sometimes what's needed is a legal referral. Sometimes the patient, it's not a matter of getting them assistance in setup with a benefit. It's not that straightforward. They may have to appeal. They may have to fight for their benefits a little bit harder. And so we do trainings to the staff of the hospitals on the legal issues that we can help veterans with and how to spot those issues when they appear in the healthcare setting. And we do these trainings not just when we first opened the clinic, but we continue to do them today because we find that there's a lot of staff turnover, but also just it keeps it fresh in people's mind that we're there and what we do so that the partnership can work the most fully.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Aiken-Marion, how has your medical legal partnership with New York Legal Assistance changed how you serve patients?
Well, first, before I talk about that, I just want to say thank you to all of you attorneys who work for our veterans. As someone who works full-time with veterans every single day, most of whom are eking out a living, especially in New York City, which is so challenging, it's just been very rewarding for me to see that people in the legal profession are so dedicated to the veterans as well. So thank you. So when the New York Legal Assistance first started coming to the VA, we have I'm the director of the mental health clinic, and we have clinical teams that include psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers in the mental health department. And the attorneys would come in and educate us a little bit about first what they could do. And it was amazing to hear that we could actually refer a patient who is struggling with, let's say, a Social Security disability denial, which is a very common outcome of the first application, and that then these attorneys would be able to help the veteran, advocate for the veteran without taking a huge cut of some future reward that they would get. And I think all of us in the clinic have really benefited from being able to now sort of say to our patients, for example, I'll say, okay, we've talked about your medications, we've talked about your support system, but are there any new stresses in your life? And sometimes those stresses are financial. Are you having any issues there? Are you having any issues with your housing? So just last week, I had finished my general sort of check-in with my patient, and I asked him how things were going with his housing, and it turned out that he was having a landlord issue that sounded like, to me, not being an attorney, but it sounded like one call from an attorney would make a huge difference for this man. His anxiety was up, he's irritable, he's almost homebound with his PTSD, and this was something that provided him with some real hope when I was able to give him the intake line and to explain that there might be help for him. I ask, most of our patients now are getting educated also by the legal team that comes into our clinic, so sometimes they come to us and tell us that they're having a legal issue that we'd known the patient for years and hadn't known that was an issue. Child support payments, getting their wills done, getting advanced directives done, trying to upgrade a discharge. All of these things have been more and more prominent as we've realized that they are part of something that we can help with. The VA likes to do wraparound services, but before we had the legal team embedded, we really didn't have a lot we could offer to our veterans in those departments. And we're grateful that they do keep coming back and educating us, because we have so many other things that we're doing that without those educational sessions and reminders and hearing about how many veterans they've actually helped, we just all need a refresher.
Good. We've heard the term legal stand down. Can you talk about that?
Me? Sure. I don't know what year it was, but New York Legal Assistance, Samantha can answer that.
But it was around 2014.
2014. The legal team started doing presentations that were either topic-based, such as Social Security benefits, or population-based, such as legal issues for women veterans or legal issues for veterans with PTSD or issues for older veterans. And we have in our mental health clinic a space called the Clubhouse, which is a gathering space for a lot of our veterans who really consider the VA sort of their home, away from home. And the legal team would come in and we'd post long in advance lots of signs and flyers that there'd be this session. And veterans could come in and hear from the attorneys on the topic, get educated on the topic, and have a chance to do some Q&A. And it was also open to all of us providers too, to attend if there was a special topic that, and I think this is more pertinent to social work, that they really wanted to, get up on. The thing that came along with those legal stand-down meetings is not only did the veterans get to see the attorneys in our space, but they also received a wonderful booklet that was a compilation of resources for veterans on legal issues. Those same booklets actually are really helpful for us providers. So I'll have a booklet in my office, and as I'm sitting there with the vet, I don't want to give them false hope, so I flip through with the veteran and see what references there might be, what resources. So those are, Samantha can say more about the stand-downs.
Yeah, they've really grown out of, they've grown to encompass more and more as we hear more and more feedback from both providers, but also mostly the veterans themselves. And so we've tried to respond to their needs. So I was the head of the clubhouse over at the Manhattan VA came up to me and said that he had been hearing from veterans that they really wanted something to focus on post 9/11 veterans who'd recently returned home, who were struggling with the transition and the legal issues they may specifically be facing. So we started doing a training for post 9/11 veterans to respond to their needs. If we're hearing a lot of questions about housing stuff in our legal clinics, we know it's probably time to do a legal stand down on those issues. And they're really wonderful. We tend to get around 40 veterans to come, which is great turnout. And we try to make them as accessible as possible. So veterans, it's very informal. Veterans can ask questions throughout the process. Many of them end up leaving with knowing that they should get scheduled for an appointment with one of us to discuss the issues further. And then we do have these legal guides that we distribute to them, which have also been growing in response to the needs of the client. So we started out with a guide that was about 60 pages. Our latest edition that came out this year is over 100 pages. And they're basically one-page fact sheets on different legal issues for veterans to be able to read and flip through and know first steps that they should be taking in a case, maybe even before they see a lawyer, when they have a legal issue, because sometimes you feel that you're being treated unfairly, but you don't know that the way you're being treated is unlawful. And so the guide is very helpful for the veterans and also for the practitioners.
It sounds to me, too, that these legal education pieces are probably preventive as well, correct?
Yes, and that's what we hope for, especially the ones that we do with regard to housing and advanced directives. So with advanced directives, a lot of the times it's being able to educate the veterans on why advanced directives are so important, because oftentimes we'll get calls about a veteran who's in danger of losing mental capacity, within days, and so we have to rush over to the VA to get those done, and we're more than happy to do it. But it's great when a veteran can come in who is starting to age a little bit or is just trying to plan ahead and says, I want to get a power of attorney, I want to do a living will, so that when I reach that point, I'm already prepared. It's one less stress to worry about, which really feeds into this medical legal partnership model of trying to alleviate stresses for the veterans by addressing their legal issues so that they can sit there and focus on their health issues and everything else that the VA is there for.
Excellent. Great. Cindy, tell us about the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center's multiple medical legal partnerships with the VA facilities.
Sure. As Abby mentioned before, Connecticut Veterans Legal Center, CVLC, because it's way easier to say, is the first medical legal partnership that was co-located or embedded within the VA. In 2009, we were co-founded by graduate of NYU Law, Margaret Middleton, 2007 graduated. She showed up in 2009 at the VA and basically refused to leave. So eminent domain is how we established our space. So we didn't, somebody earlier was talking about space. For the first 9 years, this table kind of was the office we worked out of. We didn't have offices as much as we had a laptop. And wherever our laptop went, that was our office. And now the VA has dedicated space that this carpet would cover twice over, but it's fantastic. We're very happy to have it. So we live in the VA. So some of the differences are we're on site every day. The space that we're in actually creates quite a bit of a difference. We were brought in by the Aurora Community Care Center. So it's not the VA hospital, it's separate, and it's a specifically dedicated space just to the recovery and community reintegration of veterans recovering from homelessness and mental illness. So in and of itself is a special space. So we only work with veterans who are recovering from mental health issues, and they're referred by their mental health clinicians throughout the state. So one difference is who we're surrounded by. I work surrounded by clinicians. They're in homeless programs, housing stability programs, crisis intervention programs, employment programs. These are my coworkers along with attorneys. The other difference is because we're on site, we can connect with veterans in a hallway conversation. Somebody will just hear there's an attorney and they'll come up and say, you just say hello in the hall or in the ladies' room and, oh, you're an attorney. Hey, can I ask you a question? Or they'll knock on the door, I heard there's some attorneys in here. Mind if I run this by you? So it'll range from my social security number has been suspended, which, you get that phone call that we're all getting right now. So you can just casually talk them down and say, that's not a thing. Don't worry about it. And this has actually happened too, where the hallway conversation is, I was raped in the military, and what can I do about that? And we're like, well, come and let's sit down and talk about it for a little while. So being there and co-located helps us be very preventative and just be a resource for people. We focus more on that veteran's specific need with that veteran's specific issues. So we have some income guidelines, but they're very generous. We don't count any VA benefits within those income guidelines. So because a 100% service-connected veteran makes more than the federal poverty guidelines. But the veterans we work with could be service-connected for schizophrenia, so they can't advocate for themselves. So we look at that person and that legal issue, and we try and find the right solution for them. Sometimes it's through us. Sometimes, quite often, it's through private bar. We work with attorneys throughout the state, solo practitioners, volunteer, big law firms, corporate partners. In Connecticut, we have a ton of insurance companies with a lot of good lawyers. And we work with them, and the goal of the facility that we work in is to connect veterans and reintegrate into their community. We have an attorney whose job it is to connect veterans to pro bono attorneys that live and work in their community and have expertise in their legal issue.
Excellent. Can you tell us some of the legal issues that you're seeing in this population? We
see and help with about 50% VA benefits and military issues, and then the other 50% is we call everything else. So with the VA and military issues, we have some attorneys that specialize in that. I just do VA benefits. We have another attorney who's a fellow that just started, who also has a social work degree and a law degree, and she works specifically on women with military sexual trauma and men with military sexual trauma cases. We have two amazing attorneys, one of whom you know, that do discharge upgrades and access to the VA. But the heart of the medical legal partnership is actually our generalist attorneys. We have 3 generalist attorneys, and their job is to answer pretty much any question. They know a little bit about everything, and they have some pretty deep knowledge bases. And one thing they really know is also our VA partner really well. So when it comes to the partnership, they can not only advocate for veterans in the legal world, they can advocate for veterans within the VA programs themselves. So they meet with the VA clinicians, they go to their program meetings, they do the trainings that Samantha was talking about, make sure that the VA knows what we do and knows how to refer a case, and make sure that the veterans that we serve are getting the right benefits from the VA. So that I think with an MLP, it's the generalists that make a difference. And then the private bar that I talked about before supplements where we don't know something, we can go outside. So instead of, we train the private bar too, but the private bar also supplements our knowledge base by if somebody needs a will, I can do a will if you don't actually own anything. I got that. But if you have, something you'd like to actually leave and make sure it gets there, then we refer it out to somebody who specializes in that, estate planning.
Very good. Samantha, you mentioned the specialty clinics, and you talked about women's and you talked about older veterans. Are there any other specialty clinics? I know that you were saying that it's really important to have them, and you identified that.
Yeah, so we also previously had a post 9/11 veterans clinic as well. And each of those clinics have been located in the part of the hospital that makes the most sense, so that you're most connected with the veterans care team. And so the older clinic was inside of geriatric psych. The women's clinic, as I mentioned, is in women's health. The post 9/11 clinic was in the transition care management team at the VA, which is the staff that handles recently returned veterans. And so we found that so important because with a lot of the issues that our veterans are facing, we need to have close relationships with their healthcare providers. It's one of the wonderful things about being in an MLP, to Cindy's point, is that we are embedded where they receive care. And so, especially when you're dealing with veterans where their issues are so interconnected to their healthcare. So a veteran who's trying to receive veterans benefits, having a relationship with their healthcare provider is crucial for two reasons. One is that it enables me to more easily get things like medical records, doctor's letters, all those things that can support their application or their appeal. But the other way is a lot of times handling these legal issues requires the veteran to delve deeply into very traumatic experiences. And so in cases with military sexual trauma, the veteran has to speak very candidly with the attorney about what they experienced and the ways in which it's really impacted their life. And this can be very re-triggering for the veteran and can cause them to suffer sort of higher levels in the interim of their mental health conditions. And so being on site and having a relationship with the mental health care team at the VA enables me to know that my clients are safe. So I can make sure that, okay, so we're gonna meet at this time on Monday. Can you try to arrange an appointment with your therapist for the hour following when you're meeting with me? And the specialty clinics give us greater access to the specific care team our veterans in. Instead of just being in one spot for all veterans, we're able to make sure that we really are all over the hospital to best serve the various veterans we're trying to serve.
Very good, thanks. Marion and Jack, tell us, in your clinical experience, do these medical legal partnerships make a difference in the health outcomes? We're just talking about this. What's your experience?
Well, yeah, as a mental health provider, I can say that mental health providers are overwhelmingly enthusiastic about medical legal partnerships. I mean, legal providers have skills and knowledge that a lot of mental health providers simply don't have. And mental health problems really can take a long time to address. And in the meantime, legal problems can arise, and the mental health providers want to focus on the mental health issues, and they don't necessarily have the expertise to deal with the legal issues. So medical legal partnerships can help address these issues while the mental health providers can focus on the mental health issues. And in general, the healthcare field in general is realizing, there's a lot of social determinants of health beyond the medical and psychiatric conditions. There's social determinants that can affect health conditions. And so I think medical legal partnerships address social determinants of health.
Do you have an example that you can give us?
Yeah, just as an example, there was a young veteran with bipolar disorder who came through our program. This is when I served as a provider for our critical time intervention program. And he was very entrepreneurial. He had just come out of the military. He was trying to make something of himself, but he was not adhering to his medications. And he was so focused on his business that he wasn't taking his medications, and then he also wasn't paying his rent. So as a result, he received a notice to quit from his landlord. So while the healthcare team was helping him with his medications, the medical legal partnership helped, liaison with the landlord to figure out a payment plan for the veteran, so that at the end he wasn't evicted, and the healthcare team could help with his medications.
Excellent, excellent. Marion, can you give us some examples?
Sure. I think Jack's hit on a very important one, which is housing, and that's where many of the veterans I work with are in precarious housing. So many of them don't have a lease. Many of them don't have absentee landlords or landlords who aren't, taking care of the things that they should. And many of our veterans fall behind in their rent, especially my mental health veterans who, if they have bipolar disorder or they're just unable to organize themselves, and it's a very expensive city. So housing is one of, humans' basic needs. So I have a veteran who was abruptly terminated from his job after 10 years. I had been working with him. He had sort of low-level depression. He was doing okay, but suddenly this crisis evolved because he was terminated and he wasn't going to be given any employment benefits. And it sounded to me as if the termination had been very abrupt and not really fair. The legal assistance group was able to help him get unemployment benefits, which was huge for him because he had come to say goodbye to me. He thought he and his wife were going to have to move in with their daughter out of state because he literally had been living from check to check and couldn't afford his rent. So just that intervention bought him a little bit of time, and he was so grateful. And the stress that he'd been under was, at least temporarily alleviated, and he felt validated. Which was enormous for him. And I think for many of our veterans, having the legal help when they feel something is unfair and they feel the system is against them, which is something I commonly see with my patients, having an ally who's able to advocate for them and give them a voice and have that voice be heard just makes a tremendous difference in their trust, and also not just in the bureaucracies they have to deal with every day, but also in us at the VA, because we're partnering with these attorneys who are helping them.
Excellent, thank you. Jack, you studied medical legal partnerships at the VA medical centers and published an article on the topic in 2017. You featured Cindy and Samantha's organizations in that study. In fact, Cindy was one of your co-authors. Can you give us a high-level overview of the study and describe what you found?
Yeah, so we did a study in 2014 to 2016. We looked at 4 medical legal partnerships across 4 VA sites. And this study was funded by the Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation. Our legal partners were NILAG and the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center. So we basically wanted to understand who, what, and how. So who were the veterans that were seen in these medical legal partnerships, what services they were getting, and how was the impact on their mental health. So there were several interesting findings. One was that there was a lot of demand for these medical legal partnerships. So across 2 years, these 4 medical legal partnerships served about 1,000 veterans with about 1,400 legal issues. So that's a large number, and also demonstrating that a lot of these veterans had multiple legal issues. So they would present with one issue, and oftentimes the legal clinics would find that there were other issues as well that they could address. And the second thing we found was a lot of the time spent in these medical legal partnerships, the legal services were around interviewing, consulting with stakeholders. It rarely required time in courts. So a lot of these issues could be resolved before it hit, it entered the court process. And on average, it took about 5 hours for medical legal partnerships to address each case for veterans. And so compared to medical and mental health procedures, that's really not a lot of time. And then our third finding, we followed a subsample of this group, about 150 veterans over a 1-year period. We assessed them every 3 months, assessed their housing and mental health. And what we found was that at 3 months, we already saw improvements in mental health, particularly around symptoms of hostility, paranoia, anxiety. And then we looked again at 12 months, and we found that a lot of these mental health improvements were sustained. And then we also found improvements in housing and income, which shows that some of these improvements take time. At 3 months we didn't see these improvements in housing and income, but by 12 months we saw those improvements. And then lastly, we wanted to understand what these improvements could be attributed to. So we wanted to basically answer the question: was it that the veterans had a legal advocate, or was it that their legal issues were resolved? And the answer we basically found was that it's mostly both. That both, having your legal issues resolved improves your mental health, but also having a legal advocate. And we think it's related to procedural justice. Procedural justice, in contrast to distributive justice, is this idea that you have a fair process, that you participate in that process. And so we think that that is also really therapeutic for veterans.
Wonderful, good. We've pretty much run out of time, but if any of you, maybe one person, can tell us a change that you've identified, what is a change that you have identified that would allow yours and perhaps other medical legal partnerships to better serve veterans? Does anybody want, Cindy, do you want to speak?
I would love to be
Yeah,
that one person.
great. All right.
I will go quick. So one change that we're focused on right now is access to the medical legal partnership. The VA helps veterans, right? Well, kind of. They help veterans who are discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. What about the rest? We have a quick example. A veteran served 12 years with multiple deployments into war zones. They start to self-medicate and in response to the traumas that they've seen. They're discharged with an other than honorable discharge after failing a drug test. So they walk into the VA and the VA says, "You're not a veteran," right to their face. It is demoralizing, it is horrifying, and it makes somebody not want to seek treatment at the VA. Per the VA regulations, actually they are a veteran, but we're trying to help get the VA eligibility staff educated. Other veterans would say the same thing: "You're not a veteran." You are a veteran. They're denied access to the VA. Now, the VA has a broad range of services. I love the people I work with. They are amazing, dedicated people like Jack and Marion right here. They want to help these veterans, but they're denied access to these humans. So my boss, CVLC's executive director, wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. It's there this weekend about the problem, and it's recommended reading. It's really good. We're not alone in this quest. Legal Services Organization of Harvard is doing a turnaway study, and we're hoping they're going to publish the results really soon. And we're trying to change people's access. So from my perspective, the one thing that MLPs could do better to serve veterans would be giving veterans access to the M and the MLP. They have access to us. You need access to the M.
Would it be possible to just add one thing to that?
Sure.
I know we're almost out of time, I'll be quick. I just wanted to add that I think one other thing that would really change also on the issue of access is the funding issue for these services that we're providing. Many medical legal partnerships operate on a model in which after the work has shown to be successful, that oftentimes the hospital will contribute a large portion of the funding for the services that are provided by the attorneys. In legal health, this is the practice in all of our hospitals, with the exception for the VA. And the reason the VA doesn't do this is not because the doctors clearly don't support the work that we're doing, and even many of our hospitals have told us that they would love to be able to provide funding for what we do, but Congress has not authorized the VA to provide funding for these services. The VA is the federal government, and so it requires congressional authorization to fund services like ours, and that authorization doesn't exist right now. There's currently a bill pending in Congress, in the House of Representatives currently, that would enable this funding to take place. But speaking of those specialty clinics that I raised earlier, our older veterans clinic and our post 9/11 veterans clinic have unfortunately to close because of a lack of funding. And so having a steady source of support from the VA in that way would really go a long way to ensure that these services can exist for a long period of time to serve all of the veterans who so desperately need them.
Here, here.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to thank this wonderful panel.